we move into our next speaker, I would love to welcome Delaney Hines. And Delaney Hines is a dedicated advocate for health equity, particularly in cardiovascular and sickle cell anemia health initiatives. Delaney leads the national implementation of Heart and Strokes Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Strategic Plan, and has over 13 years of experience in public health research and quality improvement. With degrees in science, public health, and business administration, he also serves on the board of the Sickle Cell Awareness Group of Ontario, where he continues his work in advancing equitable care for sickle cell disease. Please welcome Delaney Hines.
Thank you so much for that warm introduction. First and foremost, Hannah, you are nice. And humble apologies, folks. I know I'm showing up a bit late. The reason being, we actually had a Learning for Life session, which is one of the programs we deliver at Sickle this morning from 11 to 1, where we were spending some time with a patient advocate talking about living with sickle cell disease and what that means to live through a stroke event, for example. So had it not been for that, I would have been here from the early portions of the day, but all that to say thank you for having me. And thank you so much. I didn't get your name. Simone, thank you so much for that warm introduction. Delaney Hines, as she very eloquently said, I'm a member of the board of directors at Sickle. I also serve as the chair for the education committee. And in my full-time job, so Sickle is my passion job, my evening and weekend job. My full-time job, I spend time at Heart and Stroke, to Simone's point, delivering and leading the EDI work there. So today, with that being said, I feel like I'm amongst family, so please don't feel like this needs to be a formal presentation. If at any point in time, interrupt me if you have a question or if something I said wasn't spoken to, clearly articulated, just let me know and I can be sure to kind of review it. So jumping right in. Ooh, that's the pointer. There we go. I'll skip over the line acknowledgement. So for today, my hope is at the close of this session, we can all walk away with a firm understanding of what the Sickle is, what we are and what we do. Spend some time giving you folks an introduction to the key elements of effective advocacy that the Sickle has, I don't want to say coined, but more or less perfected and refined to be able to advance some of our legislative activities. And then last but not least, the path to systemic change. Many a time, injections of funds could be good to get something off the ground, but in order to really have that sustainable, persistent change, a lot of the time it needs to be built into legislation. So Sickle Cell Awareness Group of Ontario. How many here are familiar with the Sickle? I hope you and pray you spend some time talking to my guy Temple outside. He was here all day. Did folks drop by the table and learn some more about the Sickle? See, I'm seeing not enough head nods. That's not what I did. Anyway, before you leave, please stop by, visit my man Temple over here. There's some brochures, some pamphlets, information at your disposal. And if that's not enough, you can always visit us at sicklecellanemia.ca, where you can find all the information about what the Sickle is all about and some of the items that we kind of deliver. So on this image here, in our top right, you'll see right here is like a little postcard or a post note, what you want to call it, that it refers to one of the Learning for Life sessions we delivered a few months back. And in this session, we spoke to the first recipient of the CAST-JV trial, which is essentially a stem cell transplant that allowed this person, or it's more or less looked at injecting a gene therapy that will remove sickle cell disease from their actual body. So it's one of the first people to undergo that therapeutic treatment. You'll see here's our World Sickle Cell Awareness Day, which I'll spend some more time talking to and how we advocated for that to be implemented into legislation. We have the quality standard that Ms. Landry was instrumental in helping to come to bear. So this speaks to essentially a best practice, making sure that anybody who arrives at an emergency department can have the care they deserve and be free of anxiety, free of fear, and free of stigma when they actually enter a health space. And then here we have our sickle cell disease education program for healthcare professionals. What's happened is, alongside a number of partners and representatives across the health system, we developed an online e-module. So what it does is it helps raise the floor. So long story short, sometimes many of our patient advocates arrive at hospitals and people have never even heard of sickle cell disease. let alone know what the symptoms look like, know what it means to see somebody in crisis, and automatically, based on, as you know, if you don't arrive in the hospital with your Sunday's best, many a time we have to face the stigma of being the color that we are and face the stereotypes that people want to impose upon us. So they're expected to be drug seeking, or they might not be there for care, so they're treated completely inappropriately. So what we did is we developed this module to help ensure that folks not only have the most up-to-date information and are held to account, so that when they do see somebody in sickle cell crisis, they know exactly what to do. So what is the Sickle? So the Sickle is the Sickle Cell Awareness Group of Ontario. It was started on June 14, 2005, so next year will be our 20th anniversary, as a Seed of Life philanthropic organization, or SOLPO. It was in the memory of a brave young man, Sunday Afolabi, who happens to be the SOLPO co-founder's or founder's brother. Sickle is a leading charitable patient organization providing evidence-based support to families with children, adolescents, and adults living with sickle cell disease across the 4 regions of the province. It supports and engages in research, health promotion, patient and care providers education, community awareness, and the development of best practice guidelines. So just some more fodder for you folks to chew on. The Sickle, I won't go through the diatribe up front, but I'll spend a little time. Our vision is to optimize the lives of individuals and families living with sickle cell disease. This is a part of a broader vision for every Ontarian with sickle cell disease to have equal and equitable access to comprehensive patient-centered care, regardless of the place or residence in the province. Our mission is to reduce the incidence of new sickle cell disease births. And what I want to clarify here is we're not trying to tell people to stop having babies if they live with sickle cell disease. But the importance is we want to make sure that folks who do have little ones with sickle cell are aware of all the considerations they need to make when helping navigate that person's life journey. Living with sickle cell disease or sickle cell trait can have a number of considerations that are not known to the uncommon person or the lay person. So we want to make sure that folks who are born with sickle cell disease have a resource center they can go to. And that's one of the values at Sickle. Patients and families come first at Sickle, and as such, we employ the core values below. So S for support, C, we're committed to improving our services for our constituents, A, we're accountable, G, gain recognition and the provincial awareness of the sickle cell disease, and openness and transparency in our services. Here lie our goal areas. So research, we have a research committee which focuses on not only producing research and filling gaps in knowledge, but also making sure we can convene folks who are, once again, providing that evidence that is also necessary to make sure the best care is being delivered. Care and treatment, like I mentioned before, we have our provider modules that helps inform people's care and treatment plans. Community services and support. So for example, many of our patient advocates who come up against a crisis, many a time they have to take leaves off work. What does that mean? Loss of income. And what does that mean? Bills pile up. So one of the things that Sickle does is we offer a community grant opportunity, which is a one-time fund. We only do what we can, but it's intended to help support and alleviate some of that financial burden folks come up against. Here we are talking about, over here today, advocacy. So I won't get too much into that right now. Education and support, like I mentioned before, we provide our Learning for Life sessions, which is a bi-monthly program. We introduce folks to budding researchers, healthcare practitioners, people like yourselves who can share not only insight, but patient stories and help inform people about things they may not have known. And last but not least, advancement through collaboration. So we work a lot with healthcare systems, healthcare provincial bodies, and other nonprofits and patient organizations like ourselves to make sure that we're all collaboratively working to make life better for those living with these conditions. Okay, that's the gist of the Sickle. The pop quiz is going to be after the session, so I hope for all of you who aren't, if you weren't listening, I'm going to tell your mom that you didn't do so well on the quiz, but we'll get there later. So what is advocacy, right? That's what we're here to talk about. We're going to spend some time talking about what it means to advocate amongst elected officials, and then spend some time talking about what it means to advocate for yourself in a healthcare system. So advocacy, the definition reads, is an activity by which an individual or a group which aims to influence decisions within a political, economic, and social system. We can all affect change, great and small. And I want to stop right here. A lot of us think you need to have millions, thousands of people to affect change. If the Sickle can be one thing I want folks to walk away with today, is the Sickle has about maybe 5 permanent employees, and not the permanent employees, 5 employees, period. And Sickle alone, with the fierce, strong leadership of Mrs. Landry, has gotten the institution of Sickle Cell Awareness Day, Global Inherited Blood Disorders Awareness Day, the recognition of a healthcare practice guideline. There's been so much change done by a small but mighty team. All it takes is persistence, some sweat, some blood, and some tears, but with the commitment and with the strength and the fortuitousness of having a blessing on your side, things can happen and be changed. Sorry, folks. So here, I want to just focus all your attention on the 3 key ingredients of ensuring you can bring about that effective advocacy and bringing about some lasting change. So the top, good case. What are your facts and arguments? When you're meeting with an elected official, as you can imagine, they are responsible for a whole constituency. Sometimes made up of millions, sometimes hundreds of thousands of people. Everybody has their needs, everybody has their wants. So when you come to an elected official with a desire, you have to make it clear and concise. It's not good to have a bloated kind of request that doesn't really pinpoint exactly what you need. So keep it very specific. That way, it's much more difficult for them to deny you. Next, well-presented test. So like I mentioned, it needs to be clearly messaged, clearly articulated, and well-formulated. So I mentioned before, Ms. Landry was instrumental in having the Sickle Cell Awareness Day recognized across the province. Pretty straightforward ask. We want to make sure on June 18th, we have folks who recognize that sickle cell is a condition that is still highly relevant and evident in the province. Very specific, very clear, well articulated. We know that over 1,500 people in the province live with the disease. We know over 150,000 people have the trait. We know with immigration, interrelational marriages and relationships, there's a number of people who will likely be born with this disease. The more awareness we have, the better we can actually begin to foreshadow impending healthcare burden, provide folks with that information so that when they do come up against a crisis, it's not foreign to them. The more we can protect against adverse outcomes. Clear message. And last but not least, timely case. There's no point in us coming to Doug Ford and saying, listen, let's give Kawhi Leonard the key to the city. It's too late, he's gone, right? You want to have something that's timely, that makes sense, that's responsible and responsive to the issues at hand today. There's no point in us talking about, the war in Iraq today. That was decades ago. You want to focus on things that are actually pervasive, that are impacting society as you speak. What you're asking for, very, very key. You have to know your priorities, the context, and I can't double down on it more, your audience. You have to understand who it is you're speaking with. Many times you end up in the office of an elected official, and for example, you'll be speaking to somebody who's the Minister of Transportation. Now, you're speaking to somebody whose mandate is to make sure the roads are clear and folks get access to their licenses. Now, what kind of influence would he have on sickle cell disease?
None.
Right? So the point of the matter is, make sure you know who you're speaking to and about what. Somebody like that, you wouldn't say, oh, here are the statistics about the burden of illness, or here are the healthcare cost burden that happens when somebody ends up in crisis. That's out of his purview. But what you could ask for is an endorsement, because what we can tell him is that, listen, the city falters when people can't go to work. And if people can't go to work, there's no need for roads. So we want to make sure that the individuals who are trying to navigate the city can make it there to work. Let's make sure the Minister of Health understands that message. Will you endorse that recommendation? So make sure you know your audience. Do not take it rote message to everybody and expect them all to appreciate it the same way. Who's your audience? So recognize your audience is a critical part of effective advocacy. As I mentioned, seek to understand their role, their impact, and how they can help or affect the situation, like I just mentioned. Who in the organization is best positioned to affect change or champion your issues? Who is most credible to speak to and about with? And remember, frustration is understandable, but long-term relationships matter. So if you come up against a roadblock, do not take it personally. There's gonna always be people who are naysayers, dissenters, individuals who don't think what you're saying is as serious or problematic as you believe it to be. But don't worry, sometimes you have to plant a seed and nurture to let it grow and come back to it later. Build a team. So I can't tell you enough. I myself don't live with sickle cell disease, but my strengths don't lie in the standpoint of understanding the lived experience. So I know that's a weakness of mine. So if I'm gonna go and speak to a health minister, I want to bring somebody who can speak intimately to what it means to live with the condition. Or, if we're talking about something in another political sphere, make sure you have people on your team who understand the issue intimately. There's no way you can kind of duplicate a lived experience unless you went through it yourself. Nobody here could tell me, no man here could tell me they know what childbirth involves, right? If I asked you, sir, what was it like giving birth to your firstborn? You couldn't tell me nothing. You could, surmise what it was, but you wouldn't have a good idea. If you want to talk about childbirth, bring your wife, bring your mom, bring your sister, bring people who are intimately connected. They can tell you what it felt like to have the piercing needle in their spine right before they got the epidural, or what it means to hold their baby in their arms the first time. You can't do that. So make sure you have people who understand what it is you're trying to advocate for. Nicely. Third-party experts. If you don't have people who have a lived experience, bring some experts. They can help flesh the gap. And last but not least, trusted colleagues or supervisors. Individuals who've been in the game for quite some time, have the ability to kind of give you some of the ins and outs, let you know what worked in the past, what failed in the past, what will work now, and what will fail now. So this is just more about the actual tactics. So the things you do day to day or the things you do during the advocacy. First and foremost, stay focused. Don't meander. As you can see here, I'm giving a couple of anecdotes, but I'm on the topic of advocacy. If you're there for a particular issue, if it's sickle cell awareness, if it's thalassemia, stay focused on those conditions. Many a time, these elected officials have a variety of things on their docket. They don't need to be confused in these conversations, so keep it clear. Be polite and respectful. Okay, we've all come up against a story of an adverse situation at a hospital, or we heard about a bad experience from somebody else. This is not the time to bring that up. Because what happens is, if there's emotional connections, you might lose your train of thought, and you spend up more time describing the story and less time articulating your argument. So stay focused. Provide practical and achievable recommendations for action. Very recently, just this past March, we went to Queen's Park. We asked for something very, very simple. We asked for the Minister of Health to include sickle cell trait on the newborn screening report. Now granted, they already have the newborn screening report. It checks for all bloodborne disorders. They already test for sickle cell trait. The thing is, they don't include the results on the report. Reason being, sickle cell trait is not a disease. But people who don't know that might see sickle cell trait and think they have the disease. It might breed hysteria, it might breed fear. So the health minister said, we're gonna keep it off because we don't wanna have people getting hysterical for no reason. But what that means is, there are 1 million people walking across Ontario who have no idea they carry the trait for a disease. Now, in an ideal world, all our African brothers and sisters will marry African brothers and sisters, all our Jamaican brothers and sisters will marry Jamaican brothers and sisters. And then what happens is, we have a huge increase of disease and burden of illness, all because they didn't know they had the trait. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you shouldn't go and intermix with folks who carry the trait, but just be aware. That's all we say. Sickle cell awareness group. Just be aware of what that means. So do your homework, take notes, always take the initiative to continue the discussion. Many a time when you leave an elected official's office, you don't get the answer you're looking for. They don't commit, they don't tell you, yes, we'll go and endorse your message. They kind of say thank you and send you on your way. But you have their email, you have their office administration's contact. Follow up, keep the pressure on them. Make sure you're making sure they are keeping aware of the condition you brought forth to their attention. And reward positive action. Everybody loves to have smoke blown up their ass. If you can go and post their picture on social media or go and share that they endorse something, politicians love that. Anytime a constituent can say, the politician did something in our favor, they use that and they add it to their portfolio, so when they go for re-election, they have things to speak to. So Materials. Clearly communicate your ask, be concise and practical, ensure the materials are really easily accessible, and provide references and contacts. So it goes back to my point. If you're articulating a message to elected officials, just be sure that what you're sharing is clear, concise, and simple. So this talks a bit more about the earlier example I mentioned about the Sickle Cell Awareness Day in Ontario, building the case. First, the Sickle was interested in instituting a Sickle Cell Awareness Day in Ontario to build greater awareness. We identified a private member, Bill, with a PC Party caucus champion. So that was the strategy we decided to take. We're gonna find a private party member, so a PC MPP, somebody who we think is looking for a mission to champion, an initiative to tackle, because like I said, they're all interested in being able to put a win on their belt. We then went and developed a compelling and easy to understand briefing. And then from that point on, we want to understand, okay, we have the strategy, we have the actual tool. Now it's important to understand, well, when is the Ontario legislature in session? When can we actually bring this bill forward? Who and when can a private member's bill be introduced? So it's not as straightforward as we'd like it to be. When these elected officials convene or they quorum, there's different agenda items. So you might have an agenda of your own, but if it's misaligned with the agenda of the elected officials, you might run yourself ragged. So make sure your timing is strategic about how you introduce things. What are the steps required for it to pass? So a lot of these bills require consensus. So you need to have, if it's 60 people in the room, you need 31 to go and say yay or nay. Otherwise, it will just fall flat and all your efforts for naught. So make sure you understand whether or not you can achieve consensus or achieve that winning vote you need. And pull delegates together to meet with parliamentarians. Back to my point, it's really great to have conventions like this, where we all convene and say on day 22, we're gonna go to Queen's Park, we're gonna meet with elected officials, and we're all gonna sing from the same hymn book that we want this change to happen. Sorry for that, I don't know when it happened. Once again, we built relationships with key political advisors. We met with MPP Andrew Kanjan, MPP Rudy Cazzetto. We were nonpartisan, so we could care less if you're a conservative, liberal, Democrat, Republican, it doesn't matter. So long as you're interested in pushing our agenda forward, you are a friend to us. And we made sure to find allies. The Thalassemia Foundation of Canada is also looking forward to making sure bloodborne disorders are recognized. So a win for us is a win for them. Because injustice anywhere is an injustice to everyone, everywhere. Long story short, the bill was jointly introduced, Bill 2255, Sickle Cell Awareness Day and Thalassemia Awareness Day Act on March 1st. A few private member bills were passed. This one was passed in an expedited path. It was signed into law on June 3rd, and champions were eager to build on the success. So like I said before, not only were we able to be happy that we got this bill passed, but now every time we go to Queen's Park, we bring back to their attention that we've done this before. We've gotten your endorsement before. And they always say, if you can ask somebody for a nickel, next time you can ask them for a muckle, because they've already given to you one time. So why would you stop asking? Keep on going back until you get what you need. Now, I wanted to make sure I spent a bit of time talking about what it means to advocate for yourself in the hospital system itself. And I want to be really clear. You attract way more bees with honey than you do with vinegar. So a lot of the time what happens is we end up at the actual hospital, we're in crisis, we're a bit perturbed, we haven't received the treatment we deserve, we're mad. So we begin to displace that aggression on the healthcare provider in front of us. These people in this moment in time are your only champions. So it's very important that you recognize even if they're not giving you the care you deserve, if they become your enemy, or if they are no longer thinking in your best interest, it will not benefit your position. If you at least can check your emotions and keep your goal in mind, being I want to get home now, I want to get home healthy, I want to get home better than I came in, that should be at the forefront of any kind of interaction you have with a healthcare practitioner. So establish common ground. Every healthcare practitioner, regardless if they're thoughtful or not, they want to make sure you're actually leaving here in better health than you came in. So try your best to establish that common goal. That way you're working together. Frame the conversation based on the fact that they want to offer great care. Many a time you might be talking to a practitioner, They may be aloof, they may be distracted, they may have been working at the ED for 18 hours, who knows, they're on their feet all day, they may be a bit terse. But the bottom line is, assume that they want to offer you great care. They're more inclined to want to interact with you a certain way and treat you a certain way if you assume they're there to do good. Opportunities for advocacy are much greater when you're not a patient. So for example, the Sickle does not try and advocate for its patients when they're at the emergency room. We try and advocate for care before they arrive at the emergency room and after they leave. So if we hear about untoward experiences, we hear about folks who feel that they've been mistreated, we make sure that the next person who crosses that threshold has a better experience. Also, we make sure that if these experiences do happen, we contact their actual ED departments, we speak to hospital leadership, and we inform them of the mistreatment or wrongdoing that our patient advocates have reported. So it's always easier to have folks listen, open their ears after a crisis. During an event, the main focus is ensuring you come home healthy and strong. Connect with your emergency department before an emergency. So many of our sickle cell patients, if you're a pediatric, you have parents who know your condition inside out. For our parents out there who are providing care to our sickle cell little ones, make sure you contact the local emergency department in advance. That way they can be informed of the sickle cell quality standard, they can be informed about the different care regimens, the best operating procedures. That way, if you ever do arrive in crisis, you can have the peace of mind that you've done your preparatory work. For our adults, the same thing goes for you. If you're living with sickle cell disease, make sure you contact your emergency department in advance. Do they know they have someone in their region or local area living with the disease? Do they have, or have they ever come in contact with someone with sickle cell disease? These are the things you can do to make sure that you're protected when you arrive. And things like, caring and keeping top of mind what's worked well, what hasn't worked well for you in the past, what's helped before if you're in pain crisis, what kind of therapies, what kind of drugs, what kind of cocktails can they provide for you to reduce your pain. And if there's time and you're feeling up to it, ask them to delay a full assessment until after they've given you that quick remedy to alleviate the pain you're enduring in a moment's time. So I didn't want to belabor the point too much, but in the event you're still interested in advocating for causes like sickle cell disease, join patient advocacy groups like the Sickle, or join patient representative groups at the hospital. These are the prime places to have your voices heard, inform change, and make sure that the actual conditions and treatment people receive will be better and much more promising than what you may have encountered. And I leave you here with All We Want Is Fair Treatment. This is one of our patient advocates who spent many untimely events in the actual hospital, who we do this work for. I implore all of you at some point in time, if you have the time, please do visit our website to hear more about our patient stories and learn more about the champions that we do our best to support. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.